You're a startup founder. You think your product is amazing and feel like more people should be buying, but the road is long and slow. It feels like you're stuck. There's always one thing I ask startup founders. Have you talked to your customers? They almost always say, heck yes, we talk to our customers all the time. But what I find is they're either selling or trying to improve their product. These are not customer-focused conversations. If we can get curious about our customers, then we can uncover critical insights that will help us build to the next round. I'm Anna Firmenov, and welcome to Building with Buyers, a show about startup growth where I'll explore how customers help startups build to the next round.
Shannon Howard, welcome to the show. Shannon is Senior Director of Customer and Content Marketing at Intellum. And Intellum is AI transformation for enterprise learning. So it helps organizations connect knowledge to results. It's like a learning management platform, right? $25 million in funding, about 139 people. And so it makes sense why I would have you on here. I'm exploring the role that customers play in helping companies build to their next level of growth. I've been exploring this concept all year. I'm actually putting together an article about all of the sort of big bets and creative marketing stuff that people have mentioned across the entire year. So that's going to be fun. There is an article that I wrote that was like 37 creative marketing plays. I think people really love this stuff because you can't ask AI, like, can you give me some creative ideas for marketing and expect anything good, right? It's all mid, it's all mediocre. So when you talk to people that actually did this work, that wasn't just like, I'm just going to sit here and type it into AI and see what it comes back with. And then, okay, let's do those things, right? They actually had meetings about this, were intentional, tried some things, learned some things. Like there is some meaty, interesting conversations from this entire year. So I think that's why people really like to hear about creative marketing, creative customer marketing. So we're going to talk about customers and how they play such an important role. I don't think people stop to consider how important their customers are. Would you agree with that, Shannon?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think we are more focused usually on getting people in the door than their experience once they're in the building.
Yep. Like we got the customer. Great. Let's move on. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that people don't stop to consider how important their customers are, that's beyond revenue. Yeah, of course they're important because they're paying you. That's beyond case studies. That's beyond testimonials because that's just like tip of the iceberg stuff. Trust is very much like peer-led. A lot of growth still comes from referrals, word of mouth. And I really do think customer love is so important. It is like so important. We'll talk about like a recent article too that talks about how CMOs are sleeping on this opportunity of creating customer love, creating creative customer marketing plays. I think it's just a huge opportunity. And so that's really where Building with Buyers was born from. You already have customers. They already love you. They're more likely to stay with you, right? If you've built something that's uniquely useful for them. And your customers are your moat, not your product, because it's so easy to build anything these days, right? It's your customers. They're unique to you. They are your moat. So, all right, let's start with Intellum. Who's on your team? Tell me about your team.
Okay. So I sit on the marketing team. There's 8 of us, and we're a little bit, each one kind of does their own thing. So we've got CMO, demand gen, SDR, product marketing, design, automation. I run customer and content marketing. And then Audrey, who's on my team, is our marketing programs manager. So she does events, webinars, and customer advocacy.
Okay. So pretty good size marketing team. Let's just jump right into it. What are some of your, what you consider creative customer marketing plays that like come to mind?
So I think when I was thinking about this question, a lot of what I've been doing at Intellum is kind of building the foundation of customer marketing where I've followed Kevin Lau and Leslie Barrett, and they have some really fun campaigns for more established teams.
Kevin Lau's coming on my podcast
Yeah.
this month, I think, or December. Yeah. Because everybody's recommending that I talk to him. So of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you'll really enjoy that because he's got some really great plays he's done at Adobe and at Freshworks. So I think for me, probably less creative, probably more of my creative marketing has been on that acquisition side because I've been building the foundation of like, how do we segment, communicate with our customers, build up a life cycle motion, get more information about our customers so that we can kind of build and get more creative. So I think I've been building probably more of the foundation. My favorite customer marketing play, which is not creative, but I just think is pretty timeless, is just handwritten letters. I've done that so many times.
Ooh, what's that?
Just writing people a letter about like, thanks for the renewal. Or at my last company, when we did our user conference, I wrote a handwritten note to every attendee and just kind of referenced their programs and the things that they had done, which did take way too much time. But I also think like I'm just a big fan of doing what doesn't scale, right? So I know we're going to talk about AI at some point. A lot of why I try to work on the systems and the foundation of customer marketing is so that we have more time to do that human to human connection and the things that absolutely don't scale. But those systems and that technology, AI just empowers us or gives us more time to be able to do those human things.
That's actually something that you're not the first one to mention, to do things that don't scale. So I've had other customer marketers on here and they talk about that human connection and how important it is. And you know that you probably know. We recently met, but that's what I talk about all the time, like the customer research and spending time talking to customers and not just listening to recorded sales conversations, which comes up a lot. People say, oh, that's voice of customer research. And I'm like, no, it's not. That's not a customer. That's a prospect, right? Or surveys, that's surface level information. What I'm talking about is really diving deep with your actual buyers that bought and taking them back to the road that led them to be a customer. And that takes time and that brings up really interesting insights. So I won't go into it in depth here because we were just talking about creative customer marketing play, but just thinking about like the human stuff, the maybe even old-fashioned, old school stuff. I think it's making a comeback. Things like writing a handwritten note, which takes a while, and you have to look up the details about each and every person, what would make it more personalized. But that stuff is, I think people really like it. You know, that's why small in-person events, right? People want to see each other, have these conversations, serendipitous moments, stuffies in B2B. That's also something. Swag that doesn't suck. What else? There's just like ads that make you cry, 3-minute ads that make you emotional.
Yeah, I was working on an ad campaign that was very fun for me, but more because it was like, what are those words that I'm with you on, not just like building with buyers, but I want to know my customer like the back of my hand. And I want to know exactly what they say and how they say it. So I was talking to someone the other day about like Slack communities participating in Slack. And I think because we were talking about, okay, how can AI and technology help us to synthesize all the things that customers and people are saying in different spaces? And I think that's great. AI can be more places than I can, but I want to know, what did you say? In what context? How exactly did you word it? Because that's going to give me so much insight into who is this person? How do they think? What matters most to them? What keeps them up at night? And then that's like such great fodder for copy and for content and for programs and campaigns, is really knowing like, who is this person? And I think that so often gets missed. We think kind of about businesses and not really the people. We think about new logo, but not really. You have this pool of people and they're already having conversations with you, and what's top of mind for them? What are the words that they're using? Yeah. And that's what makes it really fun. I think when you get into advertising and it's not product focused, but it's really buyer focused, that's the most fun I think you can have as a creative marketer.
Totally. So you said something interesting. You're like, well, I did a lot of creative marketing when you were focused on net new and acquisition, right? And now that you're focused on customer, is the content marketing piece focused on also customers, or is it overall content marketing overall?
Content marketing overall.
Okay.
Yeah, I try to create content that's relevant for both audiences, right? So thinking more broadly, what is this thing that's happening in our industry? What do we need to know about it? What do we need to do about it? And then if you're a customer, okay, maybe Intellum can help. And here's how that happens. But something that I think is topically relevant for prospects and customers, because I think the main difference there is just, do you have access to our product or not? But otherwise, you're thinking about the same things, whether you're a prospect or a customer. You're growing your education program. You're thinking about learner engagement. How do I improve business impact? Those topics are relevant pre and post sale.
Totally. So why did you say well, I had more creativity for the acquisition side, but less so on the customer marketing side? You mentioned the simple writing, handwritten cards. Anything else that comes to mind? Or I guess I have two questions. Do you have any other examples and why you said that part about the creativity?
In a lot of the companies where I've done customer marketing, save for maybe one, customer marketing was so new that it didn't have an infrastructure. So I think a lot of creativity is are there systems in place that allow you to market to people and segment communications and personalize beyond that one-to-one manual approach? That's where a lot of my focus has been, is how do we get access to all of this customer data that lives in disparate places so that we can run more creative campaigns, we can segment to the right audiences. So that's where a lot of my focus has been the past few years at Intellum, is standing up more of that customer marketing. I know we're going to talk about what do people get wrong about customer marketing. I think a big part of that is just thinking on the advocacy, what can I get versus what can I give, and building systems that allow us to consistently, repeatedly give and invest into our customers, help them, empower them to be successful. So that advocacy is a natural next step. Because I can't ask someone, if I'm just trying to get people to advocate, it's what have I done that has led them to that point? And that's where I think maybe I'm also just thinking creative, copy and ad campaigns, which we haven't done a lot of that.
Creative could be the thing that most people don't think to do, because it's the stuff that doesn't scale. It's the thing, creative to me could be copy, could be creative campaigns, could be ads, could be what you put on that billboard that was whoa. But it could also be the small things, right? It could also be that's really creative, your processes or how you think about building that foundation. Creativity I think that it could be found everywhere. There was a company that was on the podcast and they mentioned how they do surprise and delight Fridays. Every week they're in this 1-hour meeting. We have the goal of surprise and delight. Now, how do we deliver on that? What are some ideas? That's creative. I don't know a lot of companies that have a surprise and delight, because they're always they're going to have meetings on growth and what did we get? How did we do? Right? Versus what you just mentioned, how do we give back? And I think that's the beauty of customer marketing, is that now you finally have a team or a person or a system that allows you to focus on surprise and delight and giving back. And that's the opportunity, I think, that a lot of companies are missing.
Well, maybe in that vein, I'm also a big fan of surprise and delight. I'm not very big on transactional advocacy, where we have, for example, when customers do advocate, everything's personalized rewards. Who is this customer? What would just make them smile, make them so happy to receive in the mail? And so that's all we're working with their account manager, we're working with their sales rep to understand who is this person and what's the thing that really lifts them up personally, not just professionally. We don't send boring swag.
What do you send? I'm curious. Yeah.
I've sent Titleist golf balls to an avid golfer. I've sent tea, coffee, chocolate kits to people who really love cozy things. I sent someone a wine club subscription. What did I just send the other day? Oh, I sent someone they were picking up photography. We sent them a personalized camera strap. So just things where I think it's important to show people that you're paying attention and not just to their program, their use of your product, but also like, who are you personally? How do we get to know you? Maybe also on that end, then thinking more expansively about like what is creative. Our awards program, we built it to really highlight our customers because I feel like in the world of education, you're like the unsung heroes, right? You're helping, empowering customers to be successful with your product, but nobody really is paying too much attention. You don't get I worked for one company that the sales team like rang a gong every time they closed a deal. Like you don't get the gong ring when you're in education, but like your work is really important and impactful. So how do we highlight you? And so we made that part of our awards program. How do we get recognition within your company? How do we help elevate your position within your company? And so a lot of even how we incorporate customers into our content and our programs has been, how do we position you as a thought leader, the subject matter expert, you as someone who's doing something great, elevate your voice so that you look great at work. I mean, maybe that's considered creative, but that's definitely a rewarding part. Was I had a customer say like, hey, you had me on this webinar. And a year later, people in my company are still talking about it and they're still referencing it and they're still watching it and coming to me and asking questions. And she's not like a very visible vocal person. She's not going to go out and promote herself in the business, but we gave her a platform to do that and showcase her expertise, which then built up her career internally. And so for me, for us, like that's a big part. I think for us, a lot of supporting our customers is like, how do we help you grow professionally? How do we help you level up in your career?
I love that because it kind of ties back to your platform too. You're coming full circle. You're a really smart person. And how do you then tie that to your career and your career trajectory? So that kind of ties back to what your platform even does. So did you want to mention anything else about creative customer marketing plays? I want to make sure that I don't move off of that because you did mention like maybe the creativity comes from the way that you've been building the foundation of actually having access to like these customers, the data, and being able to actually then build something creative. Because if you don't have access to the data and don't have access to ways that you can do that outreach, then it's just going to be slow. And then you can't really have the space and time and headspace to think about creativity.
That's probably where I think I've thought of myself creatively more as a problem solver of how do we get access? And I think I've done that in every role, like getting real-time access to customer data and insights, and how do you get customer data syncing across, which is wild to me because I'm not a technical person at all. I don't want to be in that world, but I like working with technical people because I understand how that foundation of good, like clean data that you can also get syncing to the different places where it can be useful and valuable so you can segment and personalize in real time, how important that is. So I'm like, I'll fight the good fight. It's not my favorite project, but I'll fight the good.
Can you give me an example of how then once you kind of worked with the teams to get that built up, what can you do with that? The ability to then have access to this data so that you can actually do something or say something or act on it. If there's a concrete example that you can share.
Yeah. Well, when I was at Litmus, which is an email testing and development company, access to that helped us to better segment and personalize communications around product releases because we were just kind of telling everybody everything all the time and looking at more, who is this most relevant to, who is this most useful for, who has done prerequisite things in the platform that would make them a good candidate for this new, like to adopt this new feature. Because if they're not doing X, like Y doesn't really make any sense. We were also able to use that to do more product adoption campaigns. Hey, we noticed that you're doing this. You might also find benefit in this, or have you considered that? We didn't get to launch it, but I was in the middle of, those like Grammarly weekly emails, and it tells you, here's the most common mistakes that you made, and here's things that you can learn, more of that based on usage data, which is a really fun, like interesting product because I got to talk to the people who did that at Grammarly and understand what's valuable, useful, meaningful. I don't want to send something that's just like, you built this many emails or you ran this many tests. Like, I don't care. Nobody cares. That's not why you bought the product. But what did that enable you to do? How many errors did you catch before they went out in the wild? Even stats around your emails, can I surface that would be helpful to you of like this type of email is performing really well, this one isn't? Like, how can I surface things that would then be meaningful and impactful for your, like in this case, email marketing strategy that you wouldn't have had before?
And you can actually share that with your boss and be like, look, I have this knowledge and I got this knowledge because this is the tool I'm using and it's highlighting that for me. How great is that, right? So it helps you, it helps them. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was also, I think, a fun creative project because then you just have to think through all the different variables of like, well, what if they didn't do anything? Or what if they went over their limit? Or what if this happened? Which is then, I don't know, that for me is fun, just thinking of those edge cases. And then what do you want to do in those scenarios? And how do you build out for that? And how do you make sure the whole thing is just anchored in value? I don't want to send something for the sake of sending something. Like, how do you make sure they can do something with that information?
Does that tie into like part of what you think people get wrong when it comes to customer marketing? Is that the thing that you just mentioned right now is like spraying everybody with the same product updates when it's not actually relevant for the customer? That's maybe one thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You would think that we would have more data on our customers than on our prospects, which would then enable us to better segment our communications and understand what is most important or valuable to you. So definitely segmentation, taking a one-size-fits-all approach, which I also like. I recognize that is a point in time for people. Like sometimes you start there until you get access to the data or you have the time to kind of segment out more. But I think we have to evolve past that. I think the other thing is just...
Wait, you said something really, really important. I think I want to just like reiterate this. I believe that this is true. We focus a lot on the net new and not even net new. It's like prospect data. They're not even our customers. And we're so obsessed with all of that part of the funnel. We're so obsessed with like, what are the signals? Well, how should we nurture them? How do we convert them? And all of the data on that side of the funnel. And we are less interested in our customers and how to segment them, but we should be more interested in that, right? Maybe we are a little bit more as we start building our companies because we want to understand like, okay, so who are these people? Like, or at least you should want to understand who these people are so that you could go out and find more of them. But you're right. There's an imbalance. And I kind of just stumbled into it because I've always been like preaching we should really, with our go-to-market strategy, focus on the bottom of funnel. Do we have enough understanding of our customers and do we have enough trust that we can share and show and amplify in order to like close a potential leaky bucket of people that we bring in and then they don't see the value or trust us enough and then they never decide to buy. But I just wanted to call that out. Sorry, you were going on in a different direction, but it is so important. I really think that's really important.
I don't think we think about it enough. Again, I just had this conversation with someone the other day about starting in B2C. And I think that was actually really helpful because B2C doesn't have a customer marketing team. Marketers just do the whole life cycle because they're dependent on recurring buyers. I think I said, you don't buy Wheaties one time. They hope that you buy Wheaties every week. And so they're thinking about how do I get you to keep buying? And then how do I help you turn your whole family into Wheaties lovers? And how do I help you tell your friends, your neighbors, people in the PTA about Wheaties and how great they are? Like that's their whole thing is like connecting with the customer to get them to be a repeat customer. But in B2B, we just forget that people are still on the other end of the transaction and there is value to that. But I think we have made marketing an acquisition channel and then customer success is the post-sale marketing. You know, like we don't even think about marketing post-sale because like account management, customer success just owns that relationship now and marketing can just go back and start recruiting new customers.
Hey, it's Anna, host of Building with Buyers. I started the show because I found that customers play such an important role in business growth, but they're often overlooked. We're so focused on net new. But the thing that makes you unique is not your product. There are so many companies solving the same problem and they have customers too. The thing that makes you unique is your superfan customers.
That's your moat. Most positioning and messaging is guesswork. I'm a customer insights and strategy advisor, and I help my clients by interviewing their customer superfans and translating those insights into clear and compelling positioning and messaging that specific people care about. So you get deeper engagement with customers and prospects, increased inbound to demos, better sales conversations, increased word of mouth, and closed deals. If you're done guessing, stumbling along, and want to be more customer obsessed, reach out. I'd love to help. And now back to the episode.
Yeah. How did that happen? That was just kind of like an artificial, like somebody just decided that customer success deals with customers. And I think in B2C, there's also there's like people that have to be on the team to oversee customer happiness. It's called more so probably support, people that complain. And so like the customer success for B2B kind of mimics the customer support for B2C, I think. But the difference is in B2B, there's more of these cross-sell, upsell motions that customer success is in charge of. And so marketing, quote unquote, doesn't have to touch that. But I've been talking to lifecycle marketers that work within B2B. And so lifecycle, I didn't really hear about in B2B until recently. And I think that makes sense. It's the whole life cycle from before you were a customer, now you're a customer, and now you're continuing to be a customer, right? Yeah. So I think that that's an interesting distinction between B2C and B2B. I don't know how we got here, though, with B2B. It is broken. The whole idea of marketing focusing on customers and marketing and focusing on customers as part of growth efforts, it's broken. Maybe we could talk about like this article, because I think it's like a good segue into this article that Latny Kanant, I think she's now CRO actually at 6 Sense. And so she used to be CMO, now she's CRO. She understands both sides of the equation. And she wrote an article that basically talks about how CMOs are sleeping on customer marketing and how important it is. I'll include a link in the show notes, but why do you think CMOs might be sleeping on the customer marketing opportunity?
Good question. We could hypothesize probably a couple different ways. I think most often it's because they've never done it before. You know, like most CMOs, their background is brand, demand, or product marketing, never usually customer marketing or even lifecycle marketing. So I think it's not maybe in their wheelhouse. I think they're often just typically gold with new logo acquisition. If they've never been gold with post-sale, then why should they care, you know? And I remember asking, because at Litmus, we had a bigger team. For a small marketing team, we had 3 people in customer marketing. And I remember asking that CMO, when we had both moved on to different companies, you invest in customer marketing everywhere you go. Why is that? And she just really understood the value of customers and how customers renew and they refer and they grow. And so that's all revenue. And she just saw that. But I don't think, and I struggle to understand it, but I just don't know why people don't see that every new customer touched an existing customer. Somehow, some way, they saw that someone else was using your product and decided that it was worth giving a shot. They heard about it from someone else. They read a case study. They did a reference call. They did something that verified that someone else was getting value out of this product and therefore it was worth paying money for. But then I don't know why we don't see the value in like marketing to our, which for me, marketing isn't just, because I think I've seen where customer marketing is just marketing to your customers, just trying to sell them on something new, versus investing in customers so that they want to stay and grow, right? So where it's more just kind of promotional versus nurturing a relationship toward growth.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you see those two things as different? Because customer marketing could be how you bring customers into your growth efforts to get more new customers. Customer marketing could also be how you market to customers to like for expansion and upsell. So making more money with the people you've already got. And I think it covers both. Is that how you see it?
I think I've thought of customer marketing as maybe if we were to simplify into 3 pillars, the advocacy. So how do we leverage current customer voice to bring in new customers? Expansion, how do we cross-sell, upsell existing customers? And then also that life cycle component of how are we repeatably, reliably helping our customers to achieve value in our product so
they stay.
they stay and refer and grow.
Yeah, that makes sense. So really, like, would you say that CMOs are sleeping on it because they just don't know any better? Is that kind of the reason you think? They just didn't come from that world, right? If you didn't experience a focus if you didn't come from B2C, which I come from B2C, so I worked at Blistex, the lip care company. I worked at Del Monte Foods. I worked at Groupon. And so life cycle is really important, right? Because you're selling things that are like $5 and you really need them to stay with you and buy more so that the customer lifetime value is much bigger than $5. So those campaigns and projects and programs that were focused on customers, we had groups and teams and everybody was doing something, right? And then you get into B2B, or I did, and I'm like, where's the customer in all of these strategic conversations? And it was just like, there was like a big gap. So I think that that's probably what the reason is. Like people just don't have that experience and background and don't think it's important.
I think maybe not having that background and again, just not being gold on something. I just think often, even you think about sales, you hear about sales will bring in a not like a poor fit customer, pass them over to customer success. Customer success can't retain them. Customer success's goal is to keep them or grow them. Sales' goal is just to get someone in the door. And then when you have those misaligned goals, yeah, of course, sales is going to bring in someone so that they hit their quota, they earn their compensation.
And then that person churns.
But because they have no goal for churn, they don't really care, because that's not their goal. So I also think there's something about, does marketing have any goal for retention? Which in some companies they do. And I think companies that have more of a PLG motion, a self-serve motion, some kind of life cycle motion do have some impact on retention or renewal. But then larger companies that are serving more mid-market enterprise, maybe not necessarily, that probably largely lives in customer success. But I don't know. I've always thought marketing is a function of scale. Like there's things that you do for marketing's sake, but then there's things that you do to support customer success and sales and partnerships at scale of there's only so much that one-to-one you can do. And then marketing is thinking, well, how do I take that, amplify it to a broader base of people? Or how do I scale that through technology?
NRR is a really important business metric. And so just like looking at that net revenue retention is important and aligning all the teams to make sure that we're all kind of tied to that. And I think that should not be skipped. Let's go back to customer research. We talked about it a little bit. You had talked about how you use research at Intellum. How do you use it in order to be more creative with your marketing?
So we talked about surveys. I don't dislike surveys, but I feel like they're insufficient. I want to double click on a question and say, well, tell me more about that. Why did you say that? Or what does that look like for you? And that's where I think I spent like one very brief year in product management, which honestly was like such a gift because then I learned how to sit down and talk with people just about their problem, pain, motivations to try to understand how are you using the product or what's valuable to you. And so I try to do that with customers even now, is just sitting down to understand what's your job? What does your day look like? Where do you get stuck? And like, yes, we can talk about the product, but I'm more interested in the context in which our product sits so that I can understand. Because usually when people are struggling, it's not our product so much as maybe it's interpersonal politics at work, or maybe it's how do I get buy-in for my program? How do I prove the value, the impact of the work that I'm doing? Maybe it's just organizational changes. A lot of companies, especially in B2B right now, are going through layoffs and restructuring, mergers, acquisitions. So there's a lot of...
Your customer data is old, basically, is what you're saying, right? Because that impacts data. Like your CRM data is basically 30% old, useless, right?
Well, sometimes I'll get on the call with somebody and I'll get insight into what's happening in their company that nobody else knew yet, because it's just like it's happening in real time. And so some of that, if you're using something to enrich data, you're not necessarily getting those insights. There's things that a person will tell you that public information won't tell you that help you to understand these people. And so I've used that really to inform a lot of our content, messaging and positioning, the wording around things. So when we're releasing products, not just what did we release, but how does this apply to your context, your situation, the problems and pains that you're experiencing on a regular basis. And maybe it's not even just a product, like I'm about to release a reporting template because people were like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to present to my executive team or how to present it to them or how to capture that information. And so we're like, okay, let's talk about that and create a resource that's going to help you. Not just like, here's where you would find that in the product, which is one level of useful, but you're going to have to actually present this to someone. And I don't imagine that you're going to pull up the Intellum platform and walk them through some dashboards. Like you're probably going to have a slide deck that has a talk track. And so let's just make that for you and then show you how to pull that information in. So that's a lot of how I've used those conversations is I want to be talking to real people as often as possible. So I know what's happening, what they're thinking about, and then what would be most relevant and useful kind of in their role.
Folks have started talking about synthetic users, which is basically not real people that you can also do customer research with. And I think the one thing that's missing, or the one thing I'm nervous about as I use AI tools for research purposes, like Dovetail, for example, these are the customer conversations I had, help me pull out the insights. And then it pulls out like 70 things. And I don't know, is this an insight? Is that an insight? Like, what did you just give me? You just puked on me. The thing that I worry about for synthetic users is that if everybody's using synthetic users, can you imagine how mediocre all of the insights will be? Because it's just based on the average person within that segment, not, how when you talk to people, everybody's weird. Everybody's different in their own. I tell my daughter, because I'm like, that's so unique. And she's like, yeah, I'm weird. I'm like, well, we're all weird, right? The way that she just makes decisions to like how she wears her hair or what she wants in her food or what clothing she decides to wear on a hot weather day versus cold weather day. So I don't think you get that level of like, there's going to be 90% of just mediocre average person, but that 10% that's missing around what's their unique perspective on things or experiences in life or context within their day in the life at work. That's what we're missing. And so then everything becomes just centered around mediocre and we don't want that.
Or vague. I think I've seen a lot of messaging copy that is just okay, but it doesn't really speak to. I remember one of the landing pages I was most proud of. I wrote a guide for managers managing people with different personalities. And I just pulled from my own experience of working with people where I just could not understand, like, you're an intelligent person. Like, why are we having this conversation? What is happening? I just can't figure out why this is so hard.
They're weird in their own way.
It has their own unique personality. And that was the whole point of the guide is like, we are, for some reason, we know everybody's different, but then we also think that everybody thinks and works the way that we do. And so we have to come to this reality that everybody approaches work differently and they think differently. But I pulled that in my experience of like, what did I think and what did I feel? And what were the questions that I asked myself that this guide would have been useful for? Like if I had something like this early in my management career. And then that was how I wrote the landing page copy. And it was like, I don't know, converted like 60% or something. But it was just the copy was so resonant because it was exactly, but in my first corporate job, B2C, I worked at a health coaching school and I was a graduate of the school and I was in their alumni community. I ran their alumni community. I was on their coaching calls. I did their live streams, webinars. I was just with these people all the time. And so when I was writing copy, I know exactly what you're saying. I know exactly what you're thinking because I talk to you all day, every day. And it's really that really precise language. But to your point of there's the thing, and then there's like, well, how do you actually word the thing? How do you think about the thing? What is that specific nuance that you would only know if you spent time with people. Sometimes I think even in the education industry, there are things that you learn, the little quirks or the language that people have, like big C, little c certification, that people are like, yes, that, she gets it. Like she understands us. And do I do the job? Not necessarily, but I know the lingo because I'm listening to the real people talking.
So much lingo in education. And I actually work with companies that sell into K through 12. So there's so much lingo that unless you're in the industry, you're going to miss it. And I mean, it's across industries, like it's probably the same. But the point I think that you're trying to make is like when you're fully in the environment, it's way easier to connect with who you're making something for and use the words and phrases that they use and just versus not being of their world. And then you just make stuff up and you make assumptions and then it doesn't connect and it's not creative. The creativity, I think, comes from the spending time, right? I think it really is coming back to your point about scaling, things that don't scale. This time spending 100 hours with customers versus you're a company that spent 10 hours. How much more creative and more effective is your marketing going to be? I bet you that the 100-hour spending time company is going to be way better at it because you're just of the environment, of the people that you're selling to. So I don't think you can scale time.
No.
I don't think AI tools are going to help us scale that. And that's what people are trying to do because we're always trying to be more efficient. But I think that we can. It's just like, what do we focus the efficiencies? Where do we focus the efficiencies? For example, recording podcast episodes. That's spending time, right? It's an hour. Each conversation is an hour. And we talk about different topics. And so I can't scale that. I have to sit down and talk, right? I have to put together like what my thoughts on where I think the conversation can be interesting and then put something together, right? So that you're up to speed. And so I can't scale that part. What I can think about scaling and where the efficiencies are is now that we had the conversation, how do I then create content from that and use AI tools to help me pull out the pieces that I think would be like, that's the intention I want to come from the piece. Now help me pull the specific parts of that conversation to make an article around it, for example, right? So there are things that we can scale. There are things that we shouldn't scale. And I don't think that if we want to be more creative with our marketing, I think that Shannon, you probably agree, is that we have to spend the time and be of their world, just like I'm doing here on the show and talking to customer marketers like you. So let's talk about in the time we have, like since we started talking about AI, I guess throughout this conversation, it's just kind of naturally embedded itself. How do you use AI? Like I just kind of talked about how I use AI in order to scale certain things and be more efficient in certain ways, but not with everything. How are you using AI?
I think for a lot of things. I'm trying to use it as much as I can, but also use it where I think it makes sense. You mentioned it'll synthesize these insights. And so I agree with you that I don't think it should ever, right? If there's a bunch of calls, right? If I took a bunch of customer calls or user interviews and I uploaded them to ChatGPT Enterprise, don't worry, your data's not going anywhere. But but if I asked it to synthesize, it might give me something that is somewhat useful. But for me, I would want to be having those conversations so I understood the nuance and I understood what they were talking about or the words that they use. So I use it to synthesize because sometimes I struggle to take everything that I've heard and then put it into nice headings and categories.
Just make sure you ask for timestamps because hallucinations happen.
Oh, are so real. Yes. So yeah, to that, I've used AI to draft things, like draft case studies. But again, it'll pull quotes that are not real. It'll pull things. But that's where it's like, I had that real-time conversation. I interviewed them for this. So I know what they said. And when I'm reading it, I'm like, that's not what they said. Or you just...
Can you imagine where we're heading with synthetic users? So these are not real people. Then we're asking them to have this research conversation with these not real people. Then we're asking it to create this case study that is not real people. I mean, how hallucinatory is the content going to be? It's just like mind blowing, completely fake.
And that's where I think I've struggled a lot, but this is where I think the human element totally comes in, is that if you're having these conversations, you have the knowledge and awareness to fact check. I was in that customer conversation for a case study. And so I know they didn't actually say that. That doesn't sound totally right. Let me go back and look at the call transcript and I can correct there. I've used it like even for some copy, but I uploaded a bunch of things that our real customers said. So our product marketer kind of programmed ChatGPT with all of our messaging, positioning, product documentation, whatever. And then I was like, layer in customer conversations and the things that they're actually saying. So even as we're working on different campaigns that we're pulling out, well, hey, do you remember when that person said this? Or I don't know. I've had some really funny, honestly, our customers are hilarious, like some really funny quotes from them, whether it's about competitors or how they feel about learning management systems in general, that I just think are so funny to include in different things.
Can you remember, like, what's an example of a funny thing that they said?
Someone recently told me that learning management systems were like air conditioners. You just find the one that fits your window.
That's amazing.
Not what I want to hear, but I got what he was saying, which is like, there isn't, and I mean, I say this working for a learning management system vendor, which I think Intellum's great and it works for a lot of use cases, but sometimes it really is this like one particular thing that you need to do. And one vendor does it better than anybody else. And that's your make or break point. So I understood that. It was just really funny how he said that, but I think it captured a lot of what people think. Is everybody wants to think, well, we're the best and we're the greatest and we can do all these things. But if you think about it through the buyer's perspective, they're like, well, this is the thing that's really important to me. And sure, you can do all these other things, but can you do this?
That's so fun to pull out something like that just makes you laugh. Could you get that from AI? Maybe. I don't know. It could probably pull something out of its butt to make you laugh, but that's coming from a real person with real humor.
Yeah. Someone, I won't name the competitor, but they said that this competitor sold them the moon and dropped them off the side of a cliff. Verbatim pulled out of this call transcript.
Oh, I would use that on the website.
I every time, because I'm like, man, brutal, like so harsh, but so real. Like that's how people feel. And it would not be an uncommon sentiment that I've heard. And I just thought, man, I love the things that capture so well what people are thinking. I'm also just really a fan of brutal honesty. So that cracks me up.
Sounds like you have customers that are brutally honest, which is always super helpful.
Yes. People have a lot of thoughts on learning management systems, but I'm here for it. So it's great. So using AI to kind of draft content, summarize things. Sometimes even I'm terrible at slide deck design, so bad. And so I'll be like, this is what I'm trying to do. And this is what I need to present. And can you help me lay this out in a way that makes sense? Or can you make this shorter? Here's my thoughts. Can you kind of make this shorter? Sometimes, actually, I was just talking to my husband about this last night. It's just like a random personal AI use case. But his feet have been getting like soaked at work just from sweat. And I could not figure out how to ask Google about how to solve this problem for him. So I was like, wet feet in boots, how to fix wrinkly toe. Like it just, and ChatGPT was like, here's what I think you're trying to say, Shannon, because I just could not English. Like I couldn't figure out what normal people would say to search for it.
So what did it recommend?
Merino wool hiking socks, like work boot socks. So I was like, done, add to cart. But I just couldn't, sometimes I just can't figure out exactly how most people would say something. And then I can give gobbledygook and chat somehow figures out like what I have attempted to say. That's a fun personal use case.
This has been great, Shannon. We covered so much stuff and kind of like a venting episode a little bit. Like, I feel like maybe because it's a Friday, I just have like a lot of things and feelings that I want to talk about and kind of poured a lot on you. So I am grateful that you are here with me to discuss a bunch of this stuff. I always like to ask at the end, do you have a question maybe that's on your mind that you want to just ask me? Because I've asked you a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking about, this concept of building with buyers. And I think a lot of companies will say they're customer first, and maybe that's not entirely true.
All of them will say it.
Yes.
All of them.
So what for you are hallmarks that would tell someone, okay, this company is actually putting the customer first?
Customer research, like actual customer research, not I listened to Gong sales calls. And then I put together our positioning, messaging, and go-to-market strategy from sales calls. That just kills me inside. Spending time on customer research. And I think if you do that well, you don't have to necessarily do it every month. I think it really does depend on how your customers are changing. Like right now, customers are changing a lot from just AI, right? You're using it, you're a customer of some platform. I'm using it, I'm a customer of platforms. We need to understand how trends change our customers. And so going back and having those conversations. But in general, if you do really thorough customer research, that just shows that you're customer first because you care about who they are as whole people. We didn't talk about that, but I have episodes where I talk about whole person customer research, which is really the context in their work environment, not just as it relates to your product. What else? I think that's one. Companies always say their customer first because it's usually like we have them in Slack so that they're able to tell us what's not working with the product, or that's customer support. That's more customer support, like making sure that you're aware of where they're unhappy so you can make them happy. But when you're customer first, I think it goes beyond, it really does go beyond that support around your product, making sure they're getting the value. It's also around customer first as it relates to customer love, right? Surprise and delight, working that into your go-to-market strategy, not taking your customers for granted, growth campaigns that tie customers in. I think ecosystem marketing has been a discussion point, which includes customers as part of your marketing. You know, it can include customers, it can include non-customers, like other partners out there. But when that's sophistication, right? That's not just like bare bones, we're customer first. That when people say that, I don't believe them right away. I'm like, do you do this in-depth research? Have you done it in the past couple of years? What did you find out from that research? How are you actually acting on it versus just holding it, collecting dust in a drawer? That's what's meaningful and shows me that a company is actually customer focused and customer first.
That makes sense. And I'm assuming not just for, because you mentioned messaging, building messaging and positioning off of sales calls. So not just, because I think often customer research ends up in product, and it's not necessarily something that people think about in other parts of the business.
Yeah, that's a shame. I think that's such a shame because it's not just about your product, just like what we talked about for B2C, right? It's like consumer insights and strategy is a big part of what B2C companies do because they want to understand the underlying behaviors and emotions. And all this is so interesting strategically for a company to know. I'm not even talking about tactically, like what do you do with the ideas and intentions that you have, but it's so obvious, and it's being done on the B2C side, and it's not being done on the B2B side as much as I think it should be. But it should be, because that's the difference between mediocre marketing and creative marketing that actually is more effective.
Definitely. Yeah.
Great question. I love it. So I'm slowly just, trying to, with this show, with building with buyers. I didn't realize customer marketing was a thing, really. Like somebody long ago mentioned customer love, that they are building a customer love team. That was maybe like a few years ago. I think more companies need to be building customer love teams. Customer love, customer marketing, it should be part of every company's go-to-market strategy, right? And not just leave it off for somebody else to take care of, like customer success. It's a marketing thing. So thank you so much, Shannon. Great question. Great conversation. If anybody wants to find Shannon, she is on LinkedIn, Shannon Howard. And if you want to check out Intellum, go to intellum.com. I will include a link in the show notes. Shannon, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for the conversation, Anna.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Building with Buyers. New episodes drop weekly, so make sure you're following wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me on LinkedIn, Anna Furmanov. Visit my website to learn more about how to turn customer insights into positioning and messaging your buyers will understand. FurmanovMarketing.com. And don't forget to leave a review if you're loving the show.